Welcome to Inside the Taubman Approach. I'm Benjamin Harding. Today's episode features an interview with Walter Aparicio. I am so delighted to welcome Walter to this podcast. Share this podcast with your friends. It's certainly growing. We have close to 20,000 downloads at this point, and we are experiencing tremendous support from the community all around the world. So continue to share this podcast and be in touch with us at GolandskyInstitute.org. Let's get into today's episode. Walter Aparicio, welcome to Inside the Taubman Approach.
Thank you, Benjamin, for having me. Happy to be here.
How did you come to the Taubman work, and how long have you been studying the work?
Right. So it was about 2015 when I was introduced to the Taubman work. Bob Durso came to do a presentation for an organization, a piano teachers organization that I belong to called Piano Teachers Congress of New York. And we have workshops for piano teachers to kind of learn and have some professional development. So he came and did just a short kind of 1 hour, maybe 1 hour and a half intro about the Taubman work. And, I had heard about it before. It's always been kind of in the air, I think. As a piano student, you always kind of like hear of things. But I had never really been exposed to it in this kind of way. So it was a bit of a revelation for me because there were a lot of things that Bob said that kind of gave me answers to perhaps some questions I was having about teaching. So I found that really fascinating. And personally, I had been a little bit struggling, maybe with some discomfort, and I always felt limited in my pianism. And so I was already looking to kind of find something to push me a little bit forward. So I called up Bob and I said, let's.
Yeah, right. And so, you're an accomplished artist, a pianist, studied at a very high level. And here you are in 2015, a session, understanding that there's always something more. There's something to acquire, basically, as a pianist. And you come across the Taubman approach. And so you started studying with Bob. And so what kinds of effects did that have on your piano playing and your pianism? What were some of the immediate effects, let's say?
So, I went into it with essentially some questions in the beginning for Bob. I wanted to know what it was all about. And, Bob has a very good way of knowing exactly what you need at the moment. And so I was coming to him. I was about to do a recording at a studio, and he knew this. And so I said, I have some questions about these passages, and I can't get them faster, as fast as I want them, actually. And this is not working. This is not working. And so he essentially fixed those passages immediately, in that one lesson, maybe another lesson after that as well. And that was great. And it was, it's kind of, he was like a magician. It's kind of like magic sometimes. And something happens and you don't realize what exactly is going on underneath. And so the kind of the crux of it for me was he asked me, how much do you want to know? And I said, I want to know everything. Because I wanted to know how was he able to, in, I don't know, really 1 to 2 minutes, fix this passage for me. And I found that was incredible. So I wanted to know everything. And I decided to start really at the beginning with the whole retraining process.
Incredible. And so you've been with Robert Durso now for 9, 10 years,
Yeah, almost 10.
doing this work intensely. And what kinds of effects and effects have happened as a result of that kind of deep dive into this work?
Yeah. Well, it certainly taught me how to practice. uh, and practice, not only practice, but practice in an efficient way, with a plan towards a solution, because
Yeah.
almost everything can have a solution, right? And so it's more about problem solving and inquiry instead of drilling and metronome. And look, I like the metronome in certain ways, but not the ways in which people use them to like go from 100 to 102, and which it just, uh, can be avoided, with some kind of thoughtful practice and thoughtful process. And so I think that's what one of the main things that the approach has taught me is to not only uh, uh, teach myself how to practice, but also teach my students how to practice.
Indeed. And you are an established pianist, of course, and piano teacher in New York. And your studio, can you give us a sense of how large your studio is and what kinds of students you serve?
Mm-hmm. Sure. Well, I have about 20 students right now, and it's ranged from like 15 to 25 over the years. And really from young kids to adults, and which I enjoy teaching a lot. I enjoy teaching adults a lot. And, you know, it's the kind of students who really just want to have piano as part of their lives, something kind of, I don't know, like an extracurricular activity, uh, but just to have it in their lives. And so they're not really looking to be the next pianist. I mean, I've had some accomplished students, but even they go on to different things. So the approach has helped that a lot, actually, because look, you're not gonna. The kinds of students that I have, I'm not going to sit down and do like a rotation with them for 3.5 weeks, until they get it. But you can start little by little to kind of seep it in, and then the hand and everything gets unified, and it's really beneficial for them.
Provides an efficiency for them. It provides an immediate result for them, which you referred to in your first lessons with Bob Durso. Yeah, it's such an encouraging approach in a way. It's optimistic. It's forward looking. It's solution orientated.
That's right.
And so, what kinds of artistic doors has it opened up for you in your playing, in your pursuing the piano as your passion?
Yeah. Well, a couple of things. I think that it's given me a lot of confidence to go up on stage and know that whatever I did at home in the practice room is going to work, because it is something that's been put in the hand in a very kind of thoughtful way.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a pianist who I started a little bit later than most people. I didn't start at like 4 years old. I started, I think I was like 8 or 9 actually. And so that's quite late. That's where all the, those 5 years are where you do all the fundamentals, And so I was in my head, always catching up. And, once you go to college and do a master's program and everything, you're basically all cut up, but still, you still haven't had those kinds of things. And maybe it's a more psychological thing than anything, but, the being kind of taught these kind of really fundamentals, again, it's given me a lot of confidence.
Did you ever struggle with confidence when you were going through graduate programs? Was confidence an issue for you at some point?
Oh yeah, for sure, for sure. I mean, I think it's an issue for everybody to a certain degree, because we're basically in a profession that's about comparing one person to another person, especially with competitions and things like this. And you're always listening to the person in the practice room next to you, thinking, "Oh, that's faster than I'm playing, and let me try to play it faster." And then you try to do that, and then of course it's not about speed, but you're always thinking that the person next to you is probably better, or they're going to get the next opportunity. So it's a very competitive kind of field. And so I think everybody gets a little insecure in certain ways, you know?
And so with the Taubman approach, would you say that staying with Bob toward a solution orientated approach, your confidence has grown?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Because when you put the work in your hands, rather,
Yeah.
it's stable and it works. I mean, of course, there are other factors. If you have more like a severe anxiety, that's a different issue. But in terms of just going up there and knowing that you did the right, you put the right things in your hands, and if it feels really good in your hands, and then it's easier. And so then you can actually enjoy the experience instead of trying to, I don't know, survive the concert.
Right. In fact, I love the question that the founders of the Golandsky Institute often ask students, and I'm sure you ask your students this question is, how do you feel? I love that question
Absolutely.
for building confidence. Could you just describe what that kind of questioning opens up for you as a teacher and as a learner? How do you feel? How do you feel?
Right. Well, we rarely get asked questions in lessons.
Right. In the
Instead of maybe
sense, right?
the only one is,
It's pedagogy. That's
uh-huh, exactly. And so the question you usually get is, how much did you practice? You know? Not how do you feel? Like, how many hours did you practice? So for someone to ask you to not only feel physically in your body what's happening, but to ask you, what do you need at the moment in this piece, is huge, because it actually makes you question that, you know? And of course, we rely on our teachers to kind of give us feedback and tell us what we need, but the student also knows. And I think that's really important because the student gets to take ownership of the lesson, and they tend to do work at home differently, because if they know that when they go to the lesson that they're going to be asked what worked, what didn't work, how do you feel, and how are we going to work together to make this better, they're going to work in a way that's uh, probably a little bit more thoughtful than
yeah.
just playing, and then let's see what comes out.
Yes, indeed. It's much more of a mindful approach, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Intentional, mindful,
Mm-hmm.
introspective. Sure. I mean, you're looking at how certain passages feel in the hand and such, but it's also preparing you for that public performance,
Exactly.
that sharing of music, and in that question, how do you feel? It's a fantastic question. And so, if someone, as you've mentioned, there are so many different kinds of perspectives of the Taubman approach in our field, in the piano field. And let's say, somebody comes to you and is reticent about the Taubman work, and you want to kind of encourage them along the way. What would you say to somebody who has reticent feelings about the approach?
Right. Well, it's a little bit challenging because, so it's kind of like therapy. You're either, you know, because either you're ready for it or you're not. You have to be open enough to accept things that you may, or ideas that you have been ingrained with for a long time. You have to be ready to let those go sometimes. And essentially, I would just kind of let the work speak for itself. If, for example, I went to a summer program last year. It's really like a practice retreat, which is incredible for pianists because the working pianists, working teachers throughout the year, because we don't get a chance to like focus practice in the same way. So anyway, this practice retreat, and it's an incredible experience. And there were three of us actually there who have worked with Bob, and we've been working with him for a really long time, and this approach is really a part of us. And so there was another participant there who was having a little trouble with his hands, and he had some pain, and then basically just did a left hand piece, and was just so curious, and like, how I see the three of you, and your hands are, it's like there's no effort at all in your playing, but so much comes out. And at the same time, you three play really differently. Your personalities come out. So it's not a one size fits all approach in a way. And you can still be an artist while having these tools to, it's really like the tools for mechanics and music, And so he was really curious about it. And so I think that's the kind of way people can go in, is by seeing people perform who have studied this work. And again, you can't force someone to do something that they're not ready for. So I would go kind of in that route.
Yeah, indeed. And so your friend experienced in your playing, in your conversations, and your positive outlook on the arts, that, wow, maybe that's something that I could try. And I want to say to our audience, dear listener, as you're listening to this podcast, if you're a pianist, if you're an instrumentalist even, the Taubman approach is for you, and it's for everybody. And Walter's encouragement, my encouragement to you, is to say, come at it with a beginner's mindset.
Yeah.
This is a very, popular thing in Eastern philosophy, coming at things with a beginner's mindset to allow yourself to discover what you need to discover in the discipline that you're setting your mind and hands to.
Absolutely.
So that is the way to come at the Taubman approach. It's to come at it with no preconceptions, just to allow, yourself to learn. And you can trust that you're going to see some results, because, the testimonies on this podcast and throughout the years in people's work in the Taubman approach has just produced incredible results in the playing, in how confidence is built in their performance. So what kinds of new discoveries are you experiencing right now as you continue to learn the Taubman approach, Walter?
Right. Well, the beauty is that one can continue to make discoveries, and that's, a part of music and a part of art, because, there are thousands and millions of different kinds of patterns and passages that even, the people of the teachers from the Golandsky Institute are still discovering themselves too. And so,
Indeed.
so in my lessons, and I don't study every week anymore with Bob, but when I go see him, we always find something new. And he's like, "Oh, I've never seen a passage like this." And so, it took me a few years for the work to really kind of like be the way for me to play in the way that I am playing, and it becomes, sorry, I don't know how to like explain it. It's like, this is how I play,
Yeah, it's visual, very just, this is how I play.
And so, like, it's so beneficial because, for example, I have a couple jobs where I'm accompanying choirs and things like this. And when you sit down and you sight read a piece for the choir, you're not thinking, oh, I have to rotate here or I have to do this. It just becomes how you play, and so now you're that pianist. And so it took a number of years for that to like kind of settle into my body. Of course, everybody's different, but what I'm discovering is that there's an even more efficient way to do something. So like now that I'm at, like, let's say this level of the work that I'm doing, I can even be more efficient. I can use less effort. I can feel more confident in faster or octaves or chords, and so all the elements that are there are just being refined more and more and more and more. It's like a giant piece of marble, and little by little you're like carving everything out, and it's fantastic.
It's so exciting. It's so positive. It's so enriching, and I can just see it on your face, Walter. I wish the audience could see just how much joy you have in sharing about this work. And how can folks get in contact with you in either New York or online? How can we get in contact with you, Walter?
Well, you can go to my website, which is walteraparicio.com. Or you can find me on Instagram. You can just type in my name. The handle is WF as in Frank Aparicio. And yeah, that's where you can find me. You'll see some piano work there. You'll see some things about my home country, Bolivia, which I'm a big champion of their music.
Oh, wow. Okay, so pause.
Yes.
I'm going to, of course, put all of these links in our show notes, your website, your Instagram. I want to hear more about your passion for Bolivia and Bolivian composers. Tell us what you're excited about now with that music.
Sure, absolutely. So for the past, I don't know, number of years, I've been really looking into music from Latin America and especially Bolivian composers, because it was a way to find myself. It was a way to connect to my culture. I was born in Bolivia, but I came here when I was really young to the United States. And so it was always kind of in my home and a part of me.
Yes.
One day, someone asked me, are there composers from Bolivia? And I said, I have no idea. So that was my, kind of incentive to go and find this music. And it's really incredible music. There are wonderful living composers and also older composers too. And so, yeah, I'm programming them. I'm just exposing them to the world, really.
This is phenomenal. Tell us a couple of names that we can research and even reference in the show notes here.
Sure. I would say the most important nationalist composer of Bolivia from the early part of the 20th century is Eduardo Caba, Caba. And he wrote a series of pieces called Indios, which translates to Indian airs. And it really captures the aesthetic of Bolivian music with references to folk music, kind of like Bartok did with his kind of folk music references. And so that would be a wonderful composer to start with. I actually have a recording of it, so you can go on Spotify and look it up, or any other streaming. That they're really, really beautiful pieces.
That's fantastic. And who are some living composers that you're championing now?
Mm-hmm. Well, there's this one particular living composer right now, Daniel Beisaga, and he wrote a really wonderful set of fugues, actually. And Bolivia has 9 departments. They're like 9 states, and he wrote one fugue for each state. And the subject of these fugues comes from a very popular, either folk tune or popular tune from that particular region. And so they're, of course, referencing the folk, but also they're modern fugues with, lots of modern harmonies and really intricate, wonderful work. And again, referencing the past because they're fugues, but in the present with a lot of like clusters and really, really wonderful, cool things going on there. So I would check those out. They're called Fugas Bolivianas, Bolivian fugues.
Wow. So yes, dear listener, check out Walter's work with this incredible music from Bolivia. Thank you so much for sharing that part of your art and your artistic journey. We want to participate in that journey with you. This is so exciting. My goodness. Well, Walter, thank you so much for joining us today in Inside the Taubman Approach. We have so much to talk about in the future, and we'll be sure to have you on again.
Thank you, Benjamin.